everyone, and welcome to another Florida-friendly landscaping educational program. It's going to be a fun one today. I see we have a lot of people on live, and that is fantastic. You may see here on the slide, I have Aquifer recharge gardens, and I advertise this as rain gardens. It's the same thing. It's just the name I have given rain gardens. Rain gardens sounds a lot prettier. I realize that. But this, to me, it just explains what they do, what the purpose of them is for. One of the purposes, and they are our own little aquifer recharge gardens. That's what we're doing. We are helping recharge, refill our water bank account in the aquifer. So I am Lilly Browning. I do work for Hernando County Utilities in the Water Conservation Department. I'm the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program Coordinator. If you would like a PDF copy of this program when it's all said and done, go ahead and email me, or if you have any specific questions or just want some of the links I have on here sent to you, my email is LillyB, LILLYB, as in boy, at hernandocounty.us. Please feel free to email me at any time. That really is the best way to catch me. I'm closer to my email wherever I am than my desk phone. Here are the 9 principles of Florida friendly landscaping. And the one we're going to cover today, actually these last 3, but reducing stormwater runoff, number 8, is one of the main ones that these rain gardens, these aquifer recharge gardens, this is what they do for us. They also help us recycle. And the whole point of reducing stormwater runoff is to protect the waterfront. And while we're doing that, we are also going to almost inadvertently cover number 5, attracting wildlife. So it all kind of works together. Oh, number 2, watering efficiently. I think these aquifer recharge gardens, let me let some people in. What they do is cover pretty much all 9 principles here. This is a little map of Hernando County, and what you are looking at here is all these broken up areas here. They are the 21 different, maybe that's 20. Okay, I see 20 is the highest number. 20 different watersheds here in Hernando County, meaning if a drop of water falls on the ground, or it rains on the ground in this area, the water's going to a very specific place due to topography or other issues. So we have 21 different watersheds here in Hernando County, meaning if we get, well, I don't know about you, but I left work 4:30 yesterday and went up to my house, Royal Highlands. So you can imagine I was in a pretty heavy duty storm yesterday afternoon. I did actually get out of work before too many raindrops started to fall. I stayed on the highway. I could go a back way, but I knew better than to do that. And when I got home, I actually ended up just staying in my car in my driveway for quite a while. It would be closer to run into the garage, but my garage door opener would not open the garage. I tried multiple times before I realized the entire house was black. So no, that was not going to work. So I just sat there through the rain. It was a heavy, heavy rain. There was a lot of storm water runoff. So in situations like that, there's so much runoff, and in these watersheds, they're all going to a very specific area. When we're talking about runoff, we have natural runoff, water runs downhill. There are a few hills here in Florida. There's some areas with some harder clay soil. And one of those heavy rains like yesterday afternoon is going to have a lot of runoff as compared to a nice soft all day rain that filters naturally into our soil. So runoff is pollutants' favorite express train into the nearest waterway. So I created this little train to show you what some of that stormwater runoff, some of that like whitewater creeks that you see going down the street during these heavy rains. What are they picking up when they, leave your yard and go down the street? Some people may say, it's not getting anything bad from my yard. I don't use any chemicals, anything. That's fantastic. That's wonderful. But if it leaves your yard, it's going to pick up something along the way, something not good. Also, you are not taking into consideration your roof. It could be picking up some contaminants, whether that's natural contaminants like E. coli from all the lovely little critters that might be on your roof, or heavy metals, something like that. So it picks those things up, it leaves your yard, it goes down the road, picks up your neighbor's fertilizer, the nutrients, the nitrogen, might pick up some pathogens from dog waste, something like that, debris, toxins, sediments, and even that thermal stress. If yesterday's rain was so hard and so much of it, I don't think it, got to be the temperature of the ambient air around it. But if we have some of the slower rain where it's traveling across a lot of asphalt, it might actually heat up that rain. Once it enters a waterway, could cause that thermal stress, change the temperature of the waterway. All of these things it can pick up. And of course, the more unpaved or the more paved surfaces we have, the more impervious surfaces we have, the more runoff we have. You can see here, 1 inch of rainfall can produce 16 times more runoff by volume on a 1 acre parking lot than that same 1 inch of rainfall on a completely vegetated area of equal size. Obviously, yes, if rain's falling on the green swamp, if rain's falling on a 1 acre pasture, you're not going to have near as much runoff as you are on a impervious surface. And we're getting more and more of those impervious surfaces around here. And so what's it going to do? It's going to pick up mostly this non-point source pollution. There are two very broad categories of pollution. Point source. That means we can know where it came from. Tiny point, BP oil spill, any of those situations, we can point at them and say, you did it. It's your fault. We know where it came from. But most of the pollution in our country and probably around the world comes from these non-point sources, the everyday activities of everyday people, me and you. And so the source is impossible to pinpoint. So why am I telling you all that? And if you've ever been in a rain barrel workshop, you're going to be like, heard that stuff before. It's because both rain barrels and these rain gardens help accomplish some of the same things in capturing the rain that comes from your in your yard, mostly capturing the rain that comes from your roof. Because when we think of impervious surfaces, we're thinking of roads, we're thinking of sidewalks, we're thinking of parking lots. Never really even occurs to us, oh my gosh, all the new roofs around here too. Those are all impervious surfaces on which the water lands, picks up speed, and goes on down the road. So the point of a rain garden is to take some of that rain that nature has given you and keep it. Don't let it run off down the road. And you are building basically your own little drainage retention area, a mini drainage retention area that you get to fill with pretty plants. It is not a water garden. It is not a pond. Its purpose is to halt that water that comes off your roof and would normally go down the street, stop it, make it fall into this, depressed garden, stay there for a little bit while it infiltrates down back into the aquifer. That's why I call them aquifer recharge gardens. And it says here, why use these rain gardens? It's going to increase the amount of water that filters into the ground, recharging the groundwater supplies. It might provide protection from flooding and drainage problems for you. It's going to protect our waterways because all that pollution that we talked about that gets picked up on stormwater runoff is going to end up in one way or another in the nearest waterway. It might go to a municipal drainage retention area and, seep into the ground. But a lot of times it's going to end up in one of our nearest waterways. Also, if you have, the way, you have a big heavy rain and your yard is such that it's going towards your house, you can kind of re-engineer that so it doesn't do that. And as I mentioned before, it's going to end up being a wildlife habitat if you use some of the right plants. So here is, a house. They're showing you this nice graphic. And you have a downspout on your house. And so we're going to figure out how much rain, this downspout is going to capture a little bit later on. And what you can do is go outside and see where's the water leaving my house and trying to, get down the road. What you're going to do is want to put a stop to that. So you'll see it's coming this direction. They put their rain garden right here. And so the middle of the rain garden will hold water during a heavy downpour so that the runoff can gradually soak into the water, and it never did go down to the street, to that storm drain or another storm drain along the way. And why should we use them? Well, based on studies, rain gardens have the ability to filter 40% of metal pollutants from roof shingles. Remember I mentioned, there could be, I would say there is a really good chance there is some kind of pollution on your roof from the heavy metals, from the copper and zinc strips they put there to, so you don't get mold on your roof, from all those little critters that are up on your roof, lizards, birds, raccoons, squirrels, maybe even rats from time to time. What do each of those animals do? Same thing that all critters, do, and they will do that up on your roof. So you might have E. coli issues. So these rain gardens are able to filter 40% of metal pollutants from roof shingles, automobile fluids and soil, and approximately 15% of nitrogen from fertilizers, pet waste, or wild animal waste up on your roof. And organic matter can be filtered by rain gardens as well. So you see here how it works. It's raining, and then it comes through this downspout, which happens to, go this direction. Now it looks like they did a really fancy thing here. You do not have to make it go through a pipe underground and enter, your rain garden. Just let it travel the way it normally travels. Some people, and we're going to see this, build what they call a dry creek bed, which is, just a line of rocks and it looks pretty, when it's raining on it, sends the water to this garden. And it says native plants. I'm going to cover a lot of native plants, but it doesn't have to all be native plants. And then the other part is a berm. And we're going to talk about how we build those. What's it going to do? Here's that dry creek bed I talked about. This is at the Orange County Extension Office. It recharges that local aquifer by increasing the amount of water that filters into the ground instead of running off to the nearest waterway. It reduces the amount of urban pollutants, provides habitat for birds, butterflies, and beneficial insects, and it's also going to add curb appeal to your landscape. So what consists of a rain garden? You can have a diverse mixture of flowering plants, sedges, rushes, and grasses. it mentioned in that other graphic, native plants, and I would certainly encourage that because of the nature of your rain garden. It's going to have times when it's full of water, but we're here in Florida, we know that's not going to last that long, but it's going to have to deal with our extreme weather changes. Now, what plants have been doing that, for thousands of years, but of course the native plants. So that is, one of the best reasons to use them, as well as the wildlife value. Consider bloom time. What are we talking about that? The same thing we talk about with every garden that we have, whether it's a wildlife garden or whatever. For the pollinators and for yourself and the attractiveness of it, plant things that bloom at different times. So there's always something blooming in there, except maybe in the, the dead of winter. Mix heights, shapes, and textures of plants. Don't fill up your rain garden with just one plant. Now, as far as what it does with the water, yeah, it would probably still work. But any healthy ecosystem, and this is a mini little ecosystem here, is going to have a diversity of plants. So mix the heights, shapes, and textures. You can use some mulch. I wouldn't go too heavy on the mulch, but composted yard debris, even leaves, makes great. And, add rocks, stones, gravel for more texture and interest. Obviously, you're not going to pick these up off the ground here in Florida, but if, you happen to have collected some, or, go buy some rocks, they make a great element to your rain garden. So now we're going to get into a lot of these specifics. And as I said, you can ask for a PDF of this, or at the end, you'll see where I got a lot of this information. And there is a book that you can find online as a PDF, Rain Gardens for Central Florida, that has all this written out as well. So let's see, where are we going to put it? It should be at least 10 feet from the house. We don't need to worry about basements, most of us, but you still don't want to really, be holding a lot of water right up next to the foundation of your house. So at least 10 feet from the house on a gentle slope that catches water from the downspout. That's the whole point. You may think where you might like it aesthetically, but it might not solve any practical purpose if it's not stopping the water from where it's coming from. But you do want it to integrate into your existing landscape and look nice. Sometimes, if this happens to work out for you next to outdoor gathering areas so that you can enjoy it, or your family or your company can enjoy it. Of course, as always, don't put it over your septic drain field or under a large tree. We're going to get into trees and why trees are wonderful. Trees are our allies in helping us reduce stormwater runoff and the amount they absorb. But they don't belong in your rain garden. So we're going to talk about that. You want it to be in full or partial sun. Another reason not to have the tree there. Encourage additional water infiltration. So if you already are eyeing up a low spot, that's not necessarily, you can fill that up. And if it's holding water all the time, that's a different situation. That is where you might want to consider, maybe a tree or water loving plants or something. That's not really the spot for your rain garden. What we want you to do is create another low spot that stops more of that stormwater from running off. So add other plants to your already existing low area that holds water. We want this water to go through. The size and shape. Kidney is the most popular, just like a pool, or a teardrop shape, and the size, how, many square feet it is, it really depends on the type of soil, the size of the roof, and how much water it's collecting and bringing. And of course, the depth of the rain garden, and the depth of the rain garden is going to depend on two things. It's going to depend on your soil as well as your slope of your yard. And before you go around digging very much stuff, if you know you're in an area where you might have some underground wires or something, always call 811, have them come out and make sure that that's a good area for you to dig in. So the type of soil and the drainage area, we mentioned that before. What does that have to do with anything? Well, clay soil, that's going to have the slowest rate of percolation. So the garden has to be larger to accommodate that. Many of us, live in very, very sandy soil, but not everyone around here. I was just participating in an event, like a water play event in a park in Dade City. And somebody was there who was having a very hard time putting the stakes in, the hold the slip and slide in place. Actually had to use a hammer. So, there are areas inland where we have some, almost up north like soil, a lot of clay soil. So with it not draining as quickly, you need a larger surface area for that rain garden. Sandy, which probably most of us have, that drains very quickly, you can have a smaller rain garden. So the larger the drainage area, the size of the roof where it's coming from also means the larger the garden. Calculating that drainage area. I don't like the word calculating, but we're going to go through this here. So let's pretend, for simplicity, your house is 60 feet long and 40 feet wide. So you've got to calculate your roof area. Well, that's 60 times 40 is 2,400. So your roof area is 2,400 square feet. Well, you're looking at a certain downspout and you say, I think that collects about a quarter of, what's coming off my roof. So 25% of the 2,400 square foot roof. So 2,400 times 0.25 equals 600 square feet. So a 600 square foot portion of the roof drains into the rain garden. And remember, you want to keep it 10 to 30 feet away from the house, at least 10. And calculate that portion. Here we were dealing with 600 square feet of the roof. If you're going to put this rain garden more than 30 feet from the downspout, you have to add in measuring the length and width of the lawn area to add on top of that roof area, because that will come into play as well. How deep? Typically 4 to 8 inches. I would say most people in, Spring Hills, sandy soil, flat lot, 4 inches, you're good. But if it's coming from a large area, you may need to be deeper. We're going to talk about slope in a little bit. Then if you do have a slope, you'll have to have a deeper garden. The clay soil, you'll need a wider garden for sure, maybe a little bit deeper. But when you dig that ground surface, whether it's 4 inches down, that ground surface has to be level. As I said, the slope of the lawn is going to determine the depth of the garden, because if it's coming down faster down somewhat of a slope, it's going to need a deeper hole to fall in. So let's calculate that slope. Here's what it might look like. One stake at the highest point, the uphill stake here. A second stake at the lowest point, about 15 feet away, and we'll get into that. That's the, your standard size. Use a carpenter's string or a string level. Measure the distance between the stakes, the width. Measure the height from the ground to the downhill stake. So, we're keeping everything level. Even though this is the uphill part, that's the downhill part. Okay. The horizontal distance of the string between the stakes is 180 inches. We're just going to pretend that. The string's vertical height on the downhill stake, that downhill side, is 9 inches. Divide the height by the horizontal distance between the stakes and then multiply by 100 to find your lawn's percentage slope. So that it was 180 inches wide. The downhill part was 9 inches in height in order to be level at the top. And so we do those calculations, and that is 0.05. So 0.05 times 100 means you have a 5% slope. So here's the recommended. If you have less than 5%, it says 5 inches deep. That could fit into that, that 4 to 8. If you end up having a 5 to 7% slope, you want your garden to be 6 to 7 inches deep. 7 to 12, about 8 inches deep. So using the slope of your lawn, select the depth of the rain garden based on, this calculation here. So we decided it was, what, a 5% slope. So the garden that we are pretending to build is going to be 5 inches deep. Yeah, I don't like math either, but like I said, I can send this information to you. So if your lawn has a 5% slope, you'll have that 6-inch deep rain garden. Let's say your lawn is silty, that's, has pretty good soil, and your rain garden is 10 to 30 feet from the downspout. So you're going to look at table 1. You'll see that a size factor of 0.25 because you had silty soil, and you're going to dig it 6 to 7 inches deep. So here we have the size factor is 0.25. You multiply the downspout drainage area, that was 600 feet from that other example, by this 0.25 to find the recommended rain garden area, which would be 150 square feet. Okay, see how we're following that. If your drainage area includes an area of lawn or driveway, as well as roof downspout, remember to factor that total area in it as well, especially if it's more than 30 feet away. So as we talked about, the shape of the garden, usually this kidney bean shape here, but it should be longer than it is wide. For the purposes, see, here's the downspout. This is going downhill. The water's all going to come here. We are going to build a berm here. So it goes, stops right here, hangs out for a while with these plants, and then infiltrates into the soil. So how to determine the length of the garden? Choose a rain garden with suitable for your lawn and landscaping. Say it's 10 feet. Divide the square footage of your garden by its width to find your garden's length. So you want a garden that is 10 feet wide, so divide 150 feet from that example we used before by the 10-foot width to calculate your rain garden's length. So the length in that example would be 15 feet. So, you also want to choose one that fits the area. 10 to 15 is typical. Should be wide enough for the water to spread evenly over the whole bottom. And provide enough space to put in all those pretty plants as well. I know I've never gotten this detailed before, and I'm kind of, blowing your minds, but you can always ask for a copy of this and just take it one step at a time. So digging that rain garden, we calculated its size, where we're going to put it. Now we get to start digging it. So you dig the depth of the garden at the uphill stake. Obviously, that's where the most dirt is. So you start digging all that out at that uphill stake. Maintain the same depth, stay at your, string level, maintain the same depth, and pile the dirt on the low side. This dirt that you're digging up, you're going to dig, 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 and pile there, and voila, you have your berm. That's going to stop that. So building that berm. The berm should be as high or slightly higher than the uphill edge. That's the uphill edge. Here's the berm. You want it as high as this, or even slightly higher. Compact the soil in the berm by tamping hard. Boom, 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 tamp hard on it. Have gently sloping sides and plant to integrate the rest, integrate into the rest of the surrounding garden. You see here, this is actually taking from several areas that have runoff, taking from this portion of the roof and the downspout, but also this area by the front door and this area, in the parking spot. So none of that is getting out and escaping and going down the road, becoming stormwater runoff. It's gonna hang out in this beautiful aquifer recharge garden and then soak into the soil, soak into our aquifer. Now we're going to go over a few of the things of what not to do. And I mentioned trees earlier. No, I don't have anything against trees. I love trees. I have classes on trees. And as I said before, trees are your allies in your yard in, absorbing a lot of that runoff. They're going to help take up a whole lot of the rain, that comes in your yard. And then they're going to use it and they're going to transpire it, and then it will become part of the water cycle again. Use them elsewhere. Don't use them in your rain garden for several reasons. First of all, don't worry about how fancy this rain garden is. You can get that fancy, but that's not what we're referring to today here. We're just doing, one that your average homeowner can create. But if you have a tree in there, first of all, it's going to eventually just take over. So all you will have is, a tree in a hole, basically. Its roots will, kill out the other plants. It will create too much shade. It will just hog up the whole rain garden. And it's not that good for trees to be planted low like that anyway. So trees are out of our rain gardens, but they can certainly be an integral part of our yard. Here's another thing. We're going to have to study this one a little bit to figure out, why am I telling you not to do it? Beautiful. It's a beautiful rain garden. Well, I've been working for Hernando County this is 2022, so I've been working 23 years. And I've had about 4 different positions. One of them for about 3 years was in customer service at the Department of Public Works. If you ever called and yelled at me, I will forgive you if you make this pledge with me, since I will not yell at the next customer service person I call. Have you made that pledge? Okay, then I forgive you if 8 years ago you called and yelled at me. But I learned a lot at the Department of Public Works. So what is wrong with this rain garden? It's gorgeous. Well, what they did here was, instead of digging, an area, they used the ditch in front of their house. What's wrong with that? There's several things. It's probably a little too deep. But also that's property that doesn't belong to you. As much as you be like, well, I know it and I have to take care of it. Yes, you do, unless you just want to wait until it's mowed 4 times a year or something like that. But it's not yours. That is what we call the right of way, not the right of way, not like right now, but the right of way. It basically, usually on a standard road, what the Department of Public Works or your city's municipal Public Works or your HOA, they're gonna go by the, surveys already done by the electric company. So you have the electric pole there, and you can gauge, my side is mine, the other side belongs to the municipality. So, a municipality has to have a drainage system, and their water has to be sent, they have drainage retention areas as well, but they have these ditches specifically for a purpose to send the water, so it doesn't flood the roads and keeps us all safe. So what could end up happening here is they could come by one day and either their mowers are just mow it over, just blindly mow it over, and there'd be really nothing you could do about it. Or they might say, hey, you're damming up our drainage system here, and forcibly make you remove it. So you will be damned if you do. But so the moral of the story there is, they tried to take kind of the easier way out by not having to dig the depressed area, but those ditches are for drainage for municipal purposes. Use your own property. If they had moved it and built one that stopped a lot of water from getting in that ditch, then it would not become stormwater runoff, wouldn't be part of that drainage system to, possibly enter the waterways. So there's your lesson in civics right there, or civil engineering. This is gorgeous. This is one of those dry creek beds that I talked about, and see how pretty it looks if you get a nice heavy rain and fill it up and make it look like a creek for a little bit. But the longer you look at this picture, you might already be telling yourself, what? What? Through this whole presentation, what have I said that the purpose of a rain garden was? Is to stop the water from going down the street. It looks like they may have, have some little bit of an effort to stop it at this point, but to me, especially with a big heavy rain, they're just like saying, woohoo, look, this is the way to the road. So, great idea. Maybe redirect it. Maybe have sent it the other way, into your side or backyard and into a rain garden, not down the road. So plants, I know you want to hear about some plants. So we're going to talk about some of the plants that should be plants that thrive in the sun, that can tolerate those dry to wet soil conditions. And like I said, the plants that are most used to dealing with Florida's goofy weather is going to be those native plants. And you want low maintenance. Do not use insecticides, herbicides, or any chemicals in your rain garden. The purpose of this is to filter out pollutants, not add more. And again, avoid using trees in the rain garden. Here's some plants that you should be able to find that work great in rain gardens. The cinnamon fern. Be careful with the ferns, because you probably have a whole lot of an invasive fern called Boston fern growing around, your yard. Don't just grab some of that and throw it in. You got to make sure you know what you're getting, and you get some of the natives. And this grows in our zone, 2 to 5 feet tall, 3 to 4 feet wide. It has these neat little bracts that look kind of cinnamony, hence its name. Okay. This is popular right now, isn't it? There's milkweed. If you're going to get milkweed, that's a fantastic idea, but please, 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 please get native. And I'm going to be covering more of that. I'm going to tell you about that at the end. These are the 3 native most commonly found for sale plants. Now, normally I tell a lot of people get this tuberosa here because it does well in our dry sandy soils. But we're going to have some wetness here in this rain garden. So you might be able to experiment with these 2 swamp milkweeds as well, perennis and incarnata. Please try to avoid I call it cursavaca. There's, other names, tropical milkweed, please. And I don't have time right now to get into that. I'm going to have a class on that. But this will be a great addition. And then also purple monarchs, same time. Muley grass, you can actually find this pretty easily in a big box store, believe it or not. It's going to get, pretty big, as you see here. So all of this also depends on the space that you're using. It's going to bloom in a couple of months and have that purple hue to it and just be beautiful. Elliott's love grass. As I said before, you could probably fill it up with one of these bunch grasses, but that's not really the point. The point is diversity and helping, the wildlife. Go ahead, look for this Elliott's love grass. Do not use this beach sunflower behind it in your rain garden. Beach sunflower likes it as dry as can be. It would not like that wet feet. Purple love grass. Looks very similar to the Elliott's love grass. I have this growing naturally around my yard and around my area. In another 2 months in September, if you live in the Royal Highlands, you'll see it on the side of the road. You'll see what is all that purple, haze almost. That's this purple love grass. And I have it growing in the wild parts of my yard, and I've transplanted it to other areas, and it does fantastic. Fakahatchee, again, this is going to get pretty big. So if you have a small rain garden, be careful that your whole rain garden could be this Fakahatchee grass. But everything I've read says it likes to be in wet areas. This is mine. It's in a very dry area. So, it's obviously happy either way. Canna lilies, there are native varieties. And they're going to freeze and come back. Again, they're going to take up a lot of space, so I would use them, for the larger rain gardens. Blazing star, that you really have to find at a native nursery, or you can get seeds for them, I believe. There are native varieties. They grow naturally around my house. Kind of gives you that, I lost what I was going to say. Lavender, kind of gives you that lavender look, and lavender doesn't do very well here. So this is a nice native. Here's another native, does very well in rain gardens, this coral bean. Just really kind of fun and funky, to add to your garden. And here's some starry rosinweed that's growing right next to the coral bean. This was in an actual rain garden. This is an overlooked, very nice native. So something you want to look for. Rosemary. Yeah, there's a nice herb you can add, and the aromas will be wonderful to add. Now be careful, because it can get large too and maybe start to take over. So, but it's something definitely to consider. Swamp sunflower is going to do fabulous, and it's going to bloom in the fall for you. And it's going to I have mine starting right now. They're really interesting looking before they really start blooming, because they're not going to be blooming till fall, but they're going to start growing tall and tall and tall and have these very narrow leaf, sweeping leaves off of them. They look like a bunch of cousin its in my wildflower garden until they start to bloom. But they're a lot of fun. Now let's just go over some ideas. These are, just to start your creative juices really flowing. And that plant list I gave you was by no means exhaustive. I mean, you can come up with your own ideas as well. If you want to email me and say, what do you think of using this plant? If it's something like that beach sunflower, I might say, no, not a great idea. But really, there are numerous amounts of plants that you can use. So here's someone using more of that dry creek bed idea. I love rocks, and an all rock yard is not a Florida friendly yard, but this is a place where you can enjoy the use of rocks. and they will fulfill this purpose and they will look beautiful. Here's just, a regular old Florida yard that it was probably already kind of, sagging in like that, kind of depressed. So they're like, hey, we can stop the water from going out down the road. And what they've done here, if you look very closely, I think, see there's a downspout there. I think that's going to end up in these 2 rain barrels. So that's one way you can incorporate. You can have your downspout flow into your rain barrel and use your overflow on your rain barrel to go into the rain garden. It's another way to incorporate those ideas together. This is the one that was on the cover. This is up at the University of Florida. Your classic kidney shape. And you see their use of rocks. They're almost using the rocks as a berm as well, to kind of shore up the berm. This is probably more like what you're going to do than, some of the really fancy ones, but, have fun and let your imagination rule. This one is a large one, and you can see what they're attempting to do here because they're on a hill that goes to a lake. So what they're trying to do is stop all this roof runoff from going straight into the lake. So it's filtering through these rocks. It's going to be stopped here, and a bunch of it is going to filter into the groundwater before it ends up in the lake. So, really good idea there. They are literally protecting the waterfront right at the waterfront. This is a nice small one. Okay, look at the grass. I know this is up north, but it's still the ideas. You can capture, get ideas from how to do this. And they're getting, probably the runoff from the roof going right into this rain garden here. And see how very attractive it is. Okay, we're back in Florida. See the palm trees. All right. So this gentleman, he has a pretty big production here. Massively huge downspout. So, we're at the splash zone. He's put in a nice wide area of rocks. It might be exactly 10 feet from his house. It's getting pretty close. But instead of going off down the road, or maybe it was a problem for the neighbors, so he's just capturing it all in this pretty large rain garden here. It's going to flow here. It's going to stop. It's going to talk to the plants a little bit, and then it's going to say, well, I'm going to go with the aquifer now. I'll see you next time around. So rain gardens, they capture the stormwater. That's why I call them aquifer recharge gardens. They definitely fit with our principle of reducing stormwater runoff. They fit with the principle of protecting the waterfront. They fit with the principle of recycling that water. They fit with the principle of attracting wildlife. They fit with the principle of irrigating wisely, and right plant, right place, like all of these things. Also, as I want to reiterate, this is not the place to put any pesticides whatsoever. This is going to have to be a pesticide-free zone. So reduced stormwater equates to cleaner water bodies. So that's better for all of us. This is where I got a lot of this information. It's called Rain Gardens, a manual for Central Florida residents. I'm not smart enough to have made this all up on my own. I just put it together. And this is a great guide. So you can find it at these links. Hillsborough County has a link right to it. There are other links you can go to. There's bioretention basins. By the way, let's go back to this beautiful picture. I took this rain garden picture in West Virginia, and the water's coming off of a mountain. when they are kind of halting it there before it gets further down and into the interstate. So this is being done everywhere, and there are all kinds of ways to do it. So it is a really fun thing to get into. If you're looking for some of these plants that I mentioned, there are several ways to find them. You can look up the Florida Association of Native Nurseries, FANN.org, FloridaWildflowers.org. They have a lot of seeds about that milkweed that I just mentioned. Florida Native Plant Society, look them up, find your county's chapter. I bet you in the fall, they're going to have plant sales. They love to have plant sales in the fall and in the spring, so keep an eye out for that. Our Hernando County, if you're in Hernando County, our volunteer master gardeners have a nursery that has a lot of these type of plants. They don't use any pesticides on their plants. They're all very knowledgeable, so you don't even need me there. You just go there and talk to them and say, I want to build a rain garden, and they'll be able to tell you which plants to use and not use. And here's their address. And they are open Wednesdays and Saturdays, 8:30 to 11. And there's just some other blogs here that you can follow. So I hope you enjoyed this Aquifer Recharge garden, or our rain garden presentation. As I said, any questions, email me. I have classes all the time. This class is going to be recorded, so it'll be available on Facebook within a few hours of today, and it'll eventually be on Hernando County Government YouTube. I do believe John, my partner who makes that happen, is on vacation, and I guess he's allowed to do that from time to time. So, so it may not be there. It might take a couple of weeks for it to get on, and that's fine. If you go to Hernando County Government YouTube, you'll see all of the other classes that I've done to keep you busy in the meantime. Coming up next week, Dr. Bill Lester is going to join me 10 o'clock on Wednesday for a class on micro irrigation. August 10th, I'm going to teach what I just taught right now, but in person at the Spring Hill Library at 2:30 in the afternoon. So if you know someone, your neighbor, your mom, your aunt, whoever that says, I want to learn about that, but I'm not doing the computer thing, I want to talk to someone, tell them 2:30 Spring Hill Drive Library. You don't have to sign up. We don't have that much attendance, so just come and I'll go over all of this again. Now, what I was alluding to earlier when I was talking about milkweed and monarchs, I don't have it on this list. I'm putting together a presentation called Monarchs, Milkweed, and Myths. And it's all about, the current finding of them being endangered. Not a surprise to anybody, by the way. And I'm going to address a lot of that because it probably would take an hour or so to talk about that. It's going to be a pre-recorded class that I hope to have available on August 10th around 10 in the morning. The reason I'm doing it pre-recorded is because it is such a hot button issue. And when we talk about hot button issues, I trust all of you, that's great, but everyone gets excited and starts sharing, and then the people with not good intentions catch on that this is popular. So they try to find ways of hacking and scamming their ways in. One time at the beginning of COVID, had a popular class and someone somehow got in and started showing some animated porn. So we shut that class down and started all over again. So I want it to be a safe program, so I'm going to pre-record it and then have it available. Also, I want to take the time to do it right because it is really a very important topic. So look for it around August 10th. August 17th, live presentation, pretty darn invasive plants. That kind of all fits in with what we've been talking about, even with today's class. There are so many classes, so many plants out there that people are in love with. They are in love with this or that plant and don't want to hear that it might be an invasive because it's pretty. Yes, it's pretty. It's also pretty darn invasive. So we're going to talk about that. We have part 1 and part 2, a look at natural products for pest control coming up. September 21st, I'm going to talk to Bernie. He's a very popular master gardener, Turf Talk with Bernie. And at the end of September, simple steps to follow Florida-friendly landscaping principles. I mentioned rain barrels. Here are the upcoming rain barrel workshops. If you're in Hernando County and really want one now, email me. You can join a virtual workshop tomorrow evening and pick up your rain barrel on Friday. Otherwise, we'll have an in-person one on August 16th and another virtual one on August 25th. The first way to start getting a rain barrel is to email me, LillyB@hernandocounty.us. And I am on Facebook, as most of you probably found your way to me through Facebook. You can also find me on Hernando County Government YouTube. I also have Twitter and Instagram now. Again, here is my email if anybody has any questions. And I enjoyed this talk with you today. And I hope you all have a wonderful Florida-friendly week. And we will see you again next week with micro irrigation with Dr. Lester. Thank you and have a great day.